Listen in Ekphrasis Poetry Podcast. Enjoy.
This episode is part 2 of a series on ekphrastic poems based on The Fall of Icarus by Peter Bruegel. I'll be talking about some details that were discussed in part 1 rather briefly, so if you haven't listened to part 1, I recommend you do that now. In the last episode, we looked at W.H. Auden's Musée des Beaux-Arts, an ekphrastic poem on a 16th century Dutch painting, The Fall of Icarus by Peter Bruegel. What I'd like to do in this episode is contrast last episode with another ekphrastic poem based on the exact same painting. Again, the painting is The Fall of Icarus. I'll try to post a link, but you might want to look it up to have the painting in front of you. This time, we're going back to William Carlos Williams again, this time with his Landscape with the Fall of Icarus. I think the two poets make strikingly different points, but only if you've got the keys to unlocking this poetry, which you do. And if you don't feel like you do, well, I've got a spare set, so let's dive right in. Landscape with the Fall of Icarus by William Carlos Williams. According to Bruegel, when Icarus fell, it was spring. A farmer was plowing his field. The whole pageantry of the year was awake, tingling with itself, sweating in the sun that melted the wings' wax. Insignificantly, off the coast, there was a splash quite unnoticed. This was Icarus drowning. William Carlos Williams looks at the same painting and has a similar experience as Auden. He notices the scene around Icarus's tumble to his watery death. But first, he mentions the painting and the title, Landscape with the Fall of Icarus. I've read some very interesting takes on this poem, one from David Cole noting the addition of landscape. The changing of the title to reference this poem subtly makes a point of its own. It's not the Fall of Icarus, it's a landscape. And in that whole landscape, one small detail just happens to be the Fall of Icarus. But at the end of the day, it's not the Fall of Icarus, it's a landscape. This is a kind of theme in the poem. We can see it in the first lines. According to Bruegel, when Icarus fell, it was spring. There's the mention of Bruegel, then Icarus, and ends with springtime. At the end of the day, it's spring. Even grammatically, the main clause is, it was spring. Williams here is kind of shrugging off the greatness of this situation of the Icarus story. The first two lines mention two notable Wikipedia-worthy names, Bruegel and Icarus. But even in those lines, Williams just sort of puts both of those name drops in their place. First, he kind of calls this whole scene just Bruegel's opinion, quote, according to Bruegel. And then what happens to Icarus? Well, he doesn't just become enamored of freedom, reaching for the sun itself, tragically losing his very power and tumbling to his doom. No, it's when Icarus fell. And this idea persists throughout the poem. Actually, the everyday scene is far more majestic to Williams. It's spring and its pageantry. Quote, a farmer was plowing his field. The whole pageantry of the year was awake, tingling with itself. This is a pastoral scene. The winter was gone. The sun returns. All is alive and fresh. All mimsy were the borogoves. And what was everything doing in that new, fresh, alive sun? Quote, sweating in the sun that melted the wings' wax. Remember last time how I mentioned that the use of the is risky? Well, Williams does it here too with the wings wax. But because he's mentioned Icarus, we know which wings and which wax he's talking about. In my opinion, this is a hallmark of a superior poem. But let's just suppose it's not better or worse, it just serves a different purpose. By saying the wings wax, I think it accomplishes two things, both of which kind of minimize our sympathy for Icarus. For one, by saying the wings wax, it doesn't actually say that melted Icarus's magic shoes apart, leading to his death. It just melts the wax. And two, because the, again, is a definite article, it refers to one specific thing. It answers the question, which. And because it's definite, it's not universal. The sun doesn't melt wing wax. It melts the wings wax. His. It isolates Icarus from the whole, sets him apart, and then only mentions this mythological tragedy in terms of the wax melting. The last two stanzas read rather flippantly in turn. Quote, "Unsignificantly, off the coast there was a splash quite unnoticed. This was Icarus drowning." Like Williams' other poem in this podcast, The Red Wheelbarrow, there is no punctuation here. Especially in the last two stanzas, this reads like it's deliberately haphazardly done, adding to this belief that Icarus is not really the important subject here. Icarus is insignificant. I have to laugh because we have another the off the coast, but I don't have a problem with this. I know exactly which coast. It's the coast in the painting. But I still can't point out where that coast is on a world map. It doesn't matter. To Williams, it's just the coast beside some water where Icarus happened to fall and drown. So it goes to the very end. In terms of form, though, these 3-line stanzas form 2 rising and 1 falling line, intonation-wise. Each second line adds to the rising tone, adds something, pushes a little more, like Icarus pushing a little too far, past what his father told him to, toward the sun, which then leads to his demise, the fall. Thinking of himself greater than he really was led inevitably to his untimely death, and so in form, Williams does this with intonation. And there are 6 stanzas, so it's not an extraordinary fall, the third line. We get that 6 times. And most of the time, we're talking about spring. Williams has us breathing in a double dose of spring air and then exhaling it, rather than just using it to mirror Icarus's death. In the end, for Williams, it's the world around Icarus that's more important than Bruegel or Icarus. Have a listen to see if you hear how much Williams diminishes this pride of place in the poem. Landscape with the Fall of Icarus by William Carlos Williams. According to Bruegel, when Icarus fell, it was spring. A farmer was plowing his field. The whole pageantry of the year was awake, tingling with itself. Sweating in the sun that melted the wings wax, unsignificantly off the coast, there was a splash quite unnoticed. This was Icarus drowning. If you want to try it, take an experience that you want to write a poem about. It doesn't have to be a painting. And first pay attention to the way you breathe doing that thing. Then write lines that mirror that breathing. This is a very good way of making performance poetry, by the way. And it will result in a form poem that is still engaging to read. So now we've heard 2 poets give their independent takes on this one work of art. Maybe it's clear, but I slightly prefer Williams's idea more than Auden's. But I do really like Auden's style of writing and that subtle formal point in the rhyme. I like Auden's line breaks and this clever hanging end rhyme. Formally speaking, though, both of them crafted these poems brilliantly. Which one is your favorite? I encourage you to look them up along with other ekphrastic poems to discover not only new poems, but also new works of art. What I think is cool in the end is how living Bruegel's painting is to me now. I can't read so many paintings the way these guys read The Fall of Icarus. The only one I can particularly do that with is Joseph Wright of Derby's An Experiment on a Bird in the Air Pump. I see it in the various responses of types of people to scientific experimentation and a commitment to technological advancement that both enhances our knowledge of aerodynamics, but that also kills the bird in the vacuum. It's impressive, really, how people can read these static paintings as if they were moving, as if those people 4.5 centuries away are just like you and me. Hey y'all, Preston here. Thanks for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed this series on ekphrastic poems. My favorite line of today's by William Carlos Williams were, according to Bruegel, when Icarus fell, it was spring. Tell me yours or ask me stuff on Preston's Poetry Podcast Instagram or Facebook page or via the website at prestonspoetrypodcast.com. We'll see y'all.